Good evening. Before I call the meeting to order, I did want to make everybody aware that our networking is not working this evening. This will be recorded and posted later. It will not be going out live as usual. At this time, I'm calling the meeting to order for June 26th for the Little Falls School Board meeting, business meeting. Would you please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome, everybody, this evening. The Little Falls Community Schools promotes personal and academic excellence in a collaborative, safe, and engaging environment. We're going to be starting the evening. Let's see, this is the updated one. Okay. We had a few changes made here this afternoon. With public comments, Policy 206 states, Little Falls Community Schools welcomes you to the meeting of the Little Falls Board of Education. This portion of the agenda will be limited to a total of not more than 30 minutes. Individual speakers are asked to limit their comments to not more than 3 minutes. The board asks that all comments be in keeping with, contribute to, an atmosphere of civil, courteous, and thoughtful respect in our discourse. Please make sure we are not hitting any personnel issues and bringing any of that into because of privacy data issues. So at this time, Kel, do we have a list? Sarah, would you come forward and introduce yourself and what you would like to speak about?
Sarah Merrow, talk about the cell phone policy. Dan Schilling, as you were running for a seat on the Little Falls School District 42 School Board, you campaigned on the fact that you would like to see cell phones removed from the classrooms. Thank you, Dan Schilling, for keeping your word, for pushing forward, and for seeing that that new policy of removing cell phones from the Little Falls Community Schools Middle School became a reality. Thank you, Dan Schilling, and thank you to all the teachers that assisted in the gathering of the data to show the importance of this new policy and how distracting cell phones have become in our public school system. We have some very amazing teachers who want to teach but have been struggling as they must compete with the distraction of cell phones for far too long. I hope that this new policy will once again give teachers the ability to teach their students with less distractions. We hope this eases some burden on our amazing teachers in our district. As for amazing teachers, I would like to call out 3 amazing teachers from this past school year that have positively impacted 2 of my children. Mr. Robert Stark, middle school science teacher. Mr. Stark, thank you for always being compassionate, understanding, accommodating, patient, and for just being an all-around kind human. Mr. Tenold, middle school band teacher. Mr. Tenold, thank you for always being compassionate, caring, and accommodating, and for meeting every single band kiddo where they are and pushing them to their own personal goals. And Mrs. Sabin, Lindbergh Elementary special education teacher. Erin, thank you for providing a safe place for all your students to share in love, laughter, and learning together without any judgment. Thank you for being that person. You know, that person that accepts everyone as they are, that person that protects their students as if they are their own, and that person who is eager to learn and grow so that your students can learn and grow right alongside of you. Thank you again, Dan Schilling, Mr. Stark, Mr. Tenold, and Erin Sabin, for not only doing your job, but doing your job with passion and love for all students.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Next, we have Kelly Mertens.
Good evening, school board. I just wanted to bring a light of our summer school program that we are doing in our elementary. We started on June 12th. It's a 2-week session that we did our first. So this is a little different than last year. We had 3 weeks. And this year we did 2 weeks starting June 12th. We just finished June 22nd. And it's Monday through Thursday. From the kids arrive at about 7:45 and we start at 8 o'clock with breakfast. All children are fed and the kids are dismissed at about noon. The next session will be held July 21st through August 3rd. July 24th through August 3rd. And what I like about the sessions, when I was thinking about it, I loved that the sessions, we're grabbing them before those skills are starting to fade away with summer coming. So we kind of instilled that again. And we just, myself and our second grade teacher, Dr. Nida, teach Miss Davis, teach out at Dr. Knight, and we have a paraprofessional helping us, and the nurse is also there as well. We had 43 students sign up, or I'm sorry, 43 invited. 22 students signed up to attend the full, both sessions or at least one. We have a theme every time. We just finished with the oceans. We were learning about different the different oceans, the different animals in the oceans, and trying to always put a big spin on it. We air conditioning's in the library, so we turned the library into a beach. We were kind of our beachy theme, and they just have had a great time. Another awesome part of it is there's busing is available for every child, so there should not be an issue as to how they get there or get back. Our emphasis is on reading and math skills, plus we usually do daily an art project, or writing is facilitated also in there, and some science. It has just been an awesome experience. I'm so glad to be a part of it. And just some comments I've heard from the kids. This is so fun. Do we have to leave? And my favorite is, Dad says we have to come for social interaction, whatever that means. So thank you so much. I think when they come back for the second session, it's just going to get them ready for that taste of getting back into the swing of things. And so it's just been a great opportunity. Thank you.
Kelly. Do you know what your theme is for the second session?
Yes, camping.
Camping.
So we're going to have tents, and it gets pretty crazy.
And that is all we had signed up for public comments for this evening. At this time, I will accept a motion and a second for the approval of the agenda as it was updated this afternoon.
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Dan. We have Doug and Dan. Any comments, concerns, or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Also, next we will have the consent agenda. The consent agenda handles the personnel and the prior meeting minutes. A motion and a second for that, please.
So moved.
Thank you, Doug. And a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Kelsey. We have a motion and a second on the table to approve the consent agenda as printed. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Now, I will now turn this over to Kelsey for the resolution for the acceptance of gifts.
Whereas the following have generously offered to donate to the Little Falls Community Schools. Pam Schilling, donation of $200 to the Jeff Schilling Life is Good Scholarship Fund. Vern and Bunny
Zarin.
Donation of $1,000 to the Zarin Scholarship to Male and Female Athlete of the Year. Little Falls Eye Care Center, donation of $125 for curbside treats for ECFE and SR. Zion Evangelical Lutheran Church members, donation of $350 for the Flyer Pride Backpack Program. Randall Cushing Lions Club, donation of $1,000 to Community Services Clay Target League. Mid-Minnesota Federal Credit Union, donation of $100 to Community Services Clay Target League. Anonymous, donation of $1,000 to Little Falls Community Schools Middle School and High School Band Program. Walmart donation of $250 for the kickoff to summer event. Robert and Nancy Keaton, donation of $167 to CEC, oh my goodness, former school board member scholarship fund. Wendy and Greg Zelka, a donation of $167 to the CEC former school board member scholarship fund. Phil and Susie Prosapio, donation of $167 to CEC former school board member scholarship fund. Sourcewell, donation of $2,000 to the Flyer Pride Backpack Program. Little Falls Education Foundation of the Initiative Foundation, donation of $1,012.18 to Enhanced Learning in Middle School Bi-Ed Program. Little Falls Education Foundation of the Initiative Foundation, donation of $1,500 to the Functional Life Skills Program. Little Falls Education Foundation of the Initiative Foundation, donation of $1,500 to the Reading Adventures Program. Little Falls Education Foundation of the Initiative Foundation, donation of $1,300 to Let's Meet Our Sensory Needs Program. Little Falls Education Foundation of the Initiative Foundation, donation of $600 to the Supplies for Independent Living Vocational Skills class. Little Falls Education Foundation of the Initiative Foundation, donation of $1,500 to Bringing Dramatic Play into Kindergarten program. Paying It Forward, Pink Me
Pinckney.
Fund of the Initiative Foundation, donation of $1,200 to the Podium Grant Fund. Paying It Forward, Pink Me Fund of the Initiative Foundation, donation of $270 to the Spotlight Grant Fund. Paying It Forward, Pink Me Fund of the Initiative Foundation, donation of $1,150 to the Jazz Camp Grant Fund. All right, one more time. Paying It Forward, Pink Me Fund of the Initiative Foundation, donation of $2,325 to the Spotlight Grant Fund.
I will second.
Okay, and a roll call vote. Dan,
Yes.
Doug,
Yes.
Sharon.
Yes.
And myself, yes.
Thank you, Kelsey. For those who aren't aware, Mr. Pinckney was the band director here for many years and actually wrote our school song. And the three for the $167 on the CEC are former school board members who started a scholarship fund that they give each year. Just keeps on coming. Next, we're going to go into presentations, and we'll start off with the middle school updates. Mr. Swenson, would you come forward?
Good evening, everyone. Madam Chair, members of the board, Superintendent Johnson, thanks for the opportunity to come and tell you a little bit about what we're planning for the middle school in the fall. There are two different items I'd like to talk to you about tonight. The first being a program called Character Strong, and then the second part is some changes that we're planning for relative to our cell phone procedures and practices at the middle school. So with that, I'm going to be doing a bit of an info dump and maybe just a little bit of teaching too, so I apologize if I am getting into the weeds a little bit, but I need to regarding Character Strong. We are planning to pilot Character Strong at the middle school in the fall. Just as an overview, Character Strong is a social emotional learning curriculum. Many of you have heard the acronym SEL before, and as someone who has been in this profession now for a considerable amount of time, I get a little bit bummed out by how SEL has been characterized by some people just in our country, because my estimation of social and emotional learning is that's a really important element of what we do in school. So having said that, I want to talk to you a little bit about Character Strong and how we landed at that. So a little bit of context. You all likely remember that I began at the middle school last year, and before I started, I was given the results of a survey that was sent out to stakeholders, families. I believe some students filled it out, staff members, and there were hundreds of responses, and I read them all. And because that was important, and when I was doing that, it was very easy to see some of the themes that came through. The number one theme, without a doubt, that came through in the feedback from stakeholders about what they wanted to see at the middle school was an improved climate and culture. And from that moment, like, not only is that what I lead with, I will continue to lead with that because it's really important. It is really important that we have a strong climate and culture at the middle school. Also, back when I started, my very first meeting was with the superintendent, counselors in the district, social workers in the district, some principals, some teachers. And at that time, we were talking about how is it that we are going to serve our students as it relates to their social and emotional learning. Because as you know, when we went through the pandemic and probably even more post-pandemic, we started to see things from our kids that we weren't necessarily used to seeing. There was a whole myriad of needs that had surfaced, and so not only in Little Falls but around the state of Minnesota and our country, that conversation was happening. At the same time, when I was at this meeting, Character Strong was being talked about, and that really took me by surprise, because the school that I came from and the district that I came from, we were planning to implement Character Strong this past school year, and they did after I left. So it was nice to see and hear some of the commonalities about what schools were thinking about how to support kids. And this is the teaching part. In education, a lot of times when we talk about supporting students, we talk about it in terms of tiers. Not that kids are a tier, but we think about it in terms of a triangle. So if you have a triangle, the bottom part of the triangle is considered tier 1, the middle part of the triangle is considered tier 2, and the top part of the triangle is considered tier 3. The conversation that we were having at that time was about how to support kids on a tier 1 level, meaning all students. It's a very important distinction, because one of the things that we do really well in our school district, and it's courtesy of the resources that you provide to us, is that we're able to meet quite well the individual needs and small group needs of kids that have pretty significant, in some cases, mental health situations going on. Some have specific skills that they're working on, and because of the resources we have with that, we're able to serve kids in tier 2 and tier 3 quite well. But if you take a look at our system, we don't really have a resource right now that serves on a tier 1 level or something for all students. And as we've gone through the strategic planning, one of the things that has come to the surface is kids, stakeholders, talking about the prevalence of mental health problems, not just in kids that have very serious mental health needs, but could I say average, like a normal kid who is just struggling with mental health in the moment, that need is prevalent, not just in our school system, but in a lot of school systems. And so that was the discussion that was being had, is how do we serve students? We put the brakes on doing anything with Character Strong at that time, go through the school year, and as a leadership team, we continue to talk about how do we serve our kids? How are we going to serve our kids? And toward the end of this last school year, I talked to Superintendent Johnson about the idea of piloting Character Strong at the middle school. And we had been talking at length about that and decided that this would be a really good time to do it, to try it. No better place than at the middle school. So let me tell you just a little bit about the distinction between Character Strong and Flyer Pride. Okay, so you all know that we have had Flyer Pride for a long time in the system. In fact, when I was first in Little Falls, I had the good fortune of helping start Flyer Pride. And I want you to think about Flyer Pride. Here's another educational acronym for you. So Flyer Pride and PBIS go together. PBIS is the framework that we embrace, that we called Flyer Pride. So Flyer Pride and PBIS are one thing. Character Strong and SEL are another thing. Again, an important distinction. With Flyer Pride, which I think we do well, and yet it's time to kind of redo that a little bit. I want you to think about Flyer Pride in terms of the environment that we establish for kids in our system. So the expectations that we have for their behavior, the type of, safe, predictable, proactive environment that we create for kids. And I want you to think about Character Strong as the teaching and learning element, which is equally as important. And they actually enhance one another, but they're different. They are not synonymous. So some may say, well, aren't we doing Flyer Pride? Isn't that enough? Isn't that going to help with climate and culture? Yes, it is, but it's not the complete picture. So when you think about the environment we're creating, aspiring to create for kids, that's Flyer Pride. I would suggest that we need the teaching and learning part about it too. And there's actually some really compelling research around, say for instance, schools that do things like Flyer Pride. They see a reduction in both the internalization needs that kids demonstrate and the externalization needs that kids demonstrate. So internalization being worry, fear, anxiety. Externalization being harassment, bullying, vandalism. When you do things like Flyer Pride, you see a reduction in those, and the overall mental health of kids improves. Okay? The same happens when you do things like Character Strong in a system. The externalization and internalization behaviors get reduced and kids' overall mental health improves. When you do them together, though, there is a significant difference in both externalization and internalization behaviors and the mental health of students. And so I think that it's very important that we are doing both of them in our system, and why we are planning to implement Character Strong next school year. So what does Character Strong do for our kids? First of all, it is broken into grade levels. So 6th graders get a different experience, 7th graders get a different experience, 8th graders get a different experience, and there's a different outcome, big outcome for each grade level. So in 6th grade, the outcome is around student well-being. For 7th grade, it's around belonging. And for 8th grade, it's around engagement. And then weaved in all of the lessons that kids do are 5 pillars that kids work on. The first being emotion, understanding and regulation. So how we feel and how we act, and I would say at the middle school level that's just really, really important. The second one is empathy and compassion, so the idea of what we understand and how we care. The third is values and purpose, so who we are and what we do. The fourth is goals and habits, so the dreams we have that we have and the actions to get there. And then the fifth is leadership and teamwork, so developing a sense of agency and working together. So kids get this different experience in each grade level around those five pillars. How would we do Character Strong? Our plan would be to do 1 lesson per week. That's how Character Strong is laid out, and we would do it over the course of 2 advisory periods each week. So as you know, we start our school day with advisory, and to be completely honest with you, that's a time during our schedule that I think that we can utilize better. Character Strong is a perfect placeholder for something like that. And so we would use, say, a Tuesday and Wednesday and do 1 lesson per week over the course of 2 days. There's also a family engagement element of Character Strong that's particularly appealing. So with each one of these lessons, there are character dares. And so middle school families would receive character dares, say from me or our Flyer Pride team, that would be, here's something that you can do in the home that's building upon what it is your kids are learning about in school today or this week. Here's a challenge for you to do in your home. And then finally, as it relates to the communication element of it, there are tools that I will be sending out to families so they are keenly aware of the plans around Character Strong. There are templates that are already made to inform families about what this is, what they can expect. And most importantly, given what's kind of going on in education right now, there's a scope and sequence that is readily available for all families to review to look at, to see the content that kids are going to be taking in, which I think is just a really important element of this as well. There's also a grade level at a glance that families can have access to, so they know of everything that is being done. And so that's a little bit, I told you it's going to be an info dump. That's a little bit about Character Strong. What questions has that created for you?
Well, Nate, I'm assigned to this building, so I've already had this discussion and got myself cleared up. But I had a couple other people that I was telling them how great this program was, and they had the same question that I asked you. How does this differ from Avid?
Yeah, so Avid is, Avid, okay. The intent of Avid is more around instruction and academia as opposed to the social and emotional learning element that is associated with Character Strong. So as an example, we have the Avid elective in the middle school in grades 7 and 8, and that's a group of students who participate in this elective class and get additional support for their academics. An intended benefit of that is also that they develop into kind of a family because they spend so much time together, so that's an added element of Avid. But the distinction for me is that Avid is very much around the academic achievement of kids, and Character Strong is more of the social emotional learning that helps kids be better at their academics.
Thank you.
Yep.
Questions and concerns?
So maybe I'm misunderstanding the whole process, but as far as it being like core to the emotional development of the kids and stuff, it sounds kind of like essentially what we were all taught growing up, the golden rule: treat others as you would like to be treated. So like with respect, dignity, you know. I guess, what's the funding element of this as far as budget-wise for the pilot program, and is it something that's really needed right now if we just emphasize, you know, golden rule and specify in our handbooks that we're going to have zero tolerance for bullying and disrespect towards teachers or others or whatever it may be like that?
I'll try to kind of take those one at a time. So I agree with you, the golden rule is really important. And what I would just add to that is there may have been a time in our history and education where we could make some assumptions around kids having a really solid understanding and belief in something like the golden rule, and they carried themselves that way. That's how they lived their lives. Unfortunately, I don't believe that we can make that assumption anymore. And I think that schools play a critical role in helping kids understand that. Some kids may come from homes where the golden rule is an expectation, and that's just how life is lived. Their parents live that way, their family lives that way, that's just how they operate. I don't know that that's the common experience for all of our kids, which is why I think it's really important as a system that we help our kids embrace something like that. But also, even if they do come to us with that solid understanding, I do believe that Character Strong is one of those things where kids can still benefit from it. We can always be a better human every day, and sometimes when you go through learning, you do lessons and stuff like that, I know I've benefited from different things that I feel like I'm already good at, but maybe you hear it differently, maybe you interact with someone you don't normally interact with. So as to the funding piece, I'm glad you asked about that. So one of the things that I was able to do this year is for the total cost of Character Strong is I was able to secure funding for over half of what it would cost for the whole program via a grant that I was able to submit for. this year, so it cut the cost pretty dramatically. And the additional resources that it would cost would come out of our middle school budget. I feel like I missed something. You asked something else too, Dan. I'm sorry.
No, I think you covered it.
Did I? Okay.
Nate, do you have contacts or have any chance to talk to your previous employer about maybe what, if they were able to glean anything after this year about their experience with it?
Great question. Thank you. I'm glad you asked that. It's almost like I paid you money to ask that question.
You
So
got a share done.
Yeah. The actually, I have kept in touch with people from my previous school district and have asked them periodically throughout the year, be honest with me, tell me how it's going. Are teachers liking it and are kids liking it? And they would be honest with me. And to a teacher, they said, we like it and the kids like it. And so to me, now had I heard differently, it might be a little bit of a red flag, but I really do believe that it's fun, so kids enjoy doing it, and it's just a different way for teachers to engage with kids that I think is really needed right now.
I would like to know how you're going to measure the success of it
Mm-hmm.
in the pilot program.
Yeah, so you may recall that in 7th grade, their main outcome is around belonging. So in previous schools that I've been in, we have actually used measures that give us an idea about kids' sense of belonging in a system. It's actually a really important measure. Right now, we do not have that in place here. That's something I would like to do. Having said that, we do have like traditional measures that we can use around our student management data that we collect each year around numbers of bullying incidents, harassment, physical things. Attendance is a big one, grades. So there are traditional metrics that we can look at to help us assess its effectiveness, but ultimately, I would like to have some type of a measure that we're able to hear from students and measure their sense of belonging at school.
One other quick question. Do you think that launching this pilot program the same time as the school district is implementing the new cell phone more strict policy, do you think it might kind of give conflict, will you be able to truly monitor the positive outcomes from the Character Strong versus students no longer having the distraction of the cell phones? I mean, will you be able to really distinguish between them, or do you think maybe it'd be best to do one first and then the next one next?
It's a really great question. The answer, honestly, I don't know, but I'll tell you what I think. I think that the cell phone changes are a technical response to something in our system, that whereas doing something like Character Strong is an adaptive thing that we're doing with our kids. So telling kids you can't use your cell phone is like a yes or no thing. You're just not going to be able to use them this year when you're at the middle school. When we do things like a Character Strong type of a thing, it involves teaching and learning. So I do believe that they'll likely complement one another, but I don't know that we're going to be able to isolate. Here's what happened as a result of cell phone changes, and here's what happened because of Character
Right.
Strong. I would, if you have some ideas, I'd love to hear them.
I was hoping you had some.
Yeah.
That's why I asked the question.
I think it'll be really tough.
One thing I like is the fact of starting it at the middle school, because unfortunately, if you follow anything on the social medias, that's the building that gets hit a lot about the bullying, the harassments, poor attendance. So it's like we're taking the problem child and giving them a chance to turn it around. So I think it's a perfect location to start, and then hopefully build it to the other buildings later.
So Nate, the other question I have for you is, something on you touched on before you talked. I know there's a certain segment of the population that believe this is indoctrination, there's certain groups of people. So how are you going to, how do we address people like that? I mean, I know you've said you've been open. What if I don't have a student in the middle school, but apparently I'm very concerned still about this?
It's a really great question. I always prefer an individual conversation, so I literally could like share examples with people and say, hey, this is what kids are doing. You should watch it yourself, see what they're doing, see what types of activities they're doing. So, and then ask your questions. Right now, we do have probably an environment where some assumptions are being made about anything associated with social and emotional learning. So I would just invite people to have a conversation with me about it so I could share resources, so I could answer their questions, tell them what it is not. And you also know, like that's tricky too, because not everybody always believes what you say, but I would invite the conversation.
Nate, is this planned to be a year-long program?
Yeah, so essentially one time a week, with some additional things that happen during each week, but Character Strong is intended to be done one time per week for the duration of the year.
Okay. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Thank you.
Yeah, the last thing I wanted to just talk to you quickly about was, and we've talked a little bit about it, was the changes to our cell phone procedures at the middle school. So it was really good year to do an assessment of, again, culture and climate, even just watching how kids utilize their cell phones at the middle school. And it was really interesting. We actually started our year having a conversation about banning cell phones this past school year. And as a team, we decided we're going to set up some restrictions around it, and we're going to see how it goes, because that's what had been done in the past. I'll save you all the additional details, but by the end of this school year, our entire leadership team, to a teacher, was like, yes, ban cell phones. And so along the way, during testing this year, I had numerous teachers who I asked for them, because kids would turn in their phones during testing periods. I asked for them, just like, don't even tell kids about it, but just like when you give them their phones back, have them tell you how many notifications they missed during that period of time. And so I had numerous teachers who did this throughout testing season. And above anything else related to cell phones, my biggest concern is about the level of distraction that our kids, even myself as an adult, face because of cell phones. And the data that I shared with families, I think, is pretty compelling. Just to give you an example, there are 8 phones in a 6th grade class. Kids had missed 150 notifications. You think about that. Every single one of those notifications, like whether it's buzzing in their pants, whether they have it on the table like this and they're seeing that, every single time a notification happens, it pulls them away from whatever it is they're doing. So I do believe that not allowing phones at the middle school this year, I think it will be a really positive change for everyone. I have a couple of stories of kids who came up to me this year. We had to work on a couple of plans with kids regarding their cell phone. And I had one boy in particular who found me, and he did not want to not have his cell phone. He came up and found me, and he said, Mr. Swenson, this is probably one of the best things that's ever happened to me, by having his cell phone taken away from him. And for a whole host of reasons. It wasn't just about distraction. It was about what cell phones do to our kids too. So I feel really comfortable moving forward with this. the day I sent out the communication to families over the course of the next probably 4 days. I kept track of all of this. I got 23 responses from families, and 22 of them were 100% supportive of doing it. So it's a small sample size, and I'm not foolish in that I know that there will be some families who this will be hard for them. But I think it's the right thing to do for our kids right now.
Any comments, questions?
Just a caveat to his positive response he got, the Morrison County Record did do a survey in one of their weekly surveys they had, and that survey came back, I want to say like 92 point some percent positive feedback too, so I think you're on the right track.
I'd like to see you come back, Nate, and present in the fall or winter and see if it's improved scores or grades or attendance or any of it.
We'll be paying attention, I will tell you that.
Yeah.
Will you please give me a reminder?
Yeah.
Because I would be happy to do that.
He's got it down.
I would be happy
One of
to
my
do that.
monthly visits
Right,
with you.
there you go, yep.
You can report back.
Okay, no, you want to get it straight from the horse's mouth.
Yeah.
Anything else you'd like to share with us today?
No, just thank you for the opportunity to come and provide you with an update. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Nate.
Our next presenter is dealing with the Transportation Academy. Mark and Ron, would you come forward, introduce yourselves, and enlighten us?
We're going to bring Mr. Bjorgi with us.
Okay,
Madam Chair, members of the board, about 2 years ago, Representative Krisha contacted me and he said,
Call me Ron.
Ron contacted me and said, I've got an idea. I want to do something with aviation and I want to partner with the school to figure out how we can do this. And so what you're going to hear about tonight is not just something that we whipped out in the last 2 months or 3 months. This has been an ongoing conversation that started small, morphed into something a little bigger, and thankfully, with his help, we're able to finally put this thing into practice. And so I'm going to let Ron talk a little bit about what he's been able to help us do, both locally, but also down at the Capitol. So, Ron, go ahead.
So thanks for having us here. So first of all, one of the things I've learned is you can do amazing things when you don't need the credit. And Superintendent Johnson was down, Principal Bjorgi was with Mark, and and Lakes Area Aviation. There's so many people that have been involved with this. So let me back way up to how we got here. Part of this is I've been involved with aviation since I was 16. It was something I got started with, then took a sidetrack, did 92 other things, came back to it later in life. And in doing that as a flight instructor, what you find is the tremendous opportunity in the transportation field and with kids. And I have had the opportunity to work with companies like Cirrus, Delta, Endeavor, as we start to get kids through this. The high school here has had a couple of students that have gone on. One, for example, Nick Anderson, who is now flying with, I think he's with Endeavor, the regionals. But in all of this, we also have a transportation crisis. Part of what we found out in the pandemic was when the truck drivers stopped being able to deliver goods as well as the cargo, everything comes to a screeching halt. And now we have a people problem. And so all of these things have started to come together. As I started looking at this and I started with Tim as well as Mark, and we started looking at ways that we could offer community ed for aviation. And in doing that, I think now we have 8 students that have come through. And these are boys and girls and students who probably would have never looked at this until later in life in college. And now we have one for sure who will have his private license before he goes off to Mankato, and a couple other ones. So the opportunities are starting to unfold. As I started to look at this, I thought, how do we expand this at the legislature, knowing that it's pretty tough to come to the school and just say, hey, we need some equipment and we need to teach some teachers some things that have no idea how to do this. How could we do this? So we came up with a pilot program that would put the funds in place and to give you a 2-year start on that. And I'm excited about that. I think you've identified a teacher. I'll let you speak to that. And then we'll help get all that education. But really what this is about, frankly, is a lot of people with a lot of aspirations and reaching the potential of the kids. And pairing this with the CDL side is really important because there are kids that'll be great pilots, there will be kids that'll be great truck drivers, but they don't know it yet. And when you get into the commercial driver's license side, the opportunities there are equally amazing. Whether it's over the road or just, I mean, you just look around here at what the need is for that. So, and I think with everything in education, kids don't know what they don't know. And so this will be an exciting way to start to get them to some of that career exploration, as well as I really believe one of the aspirations of this will be Little Falls will become one of the early pioneers in this area and the beacon for high schools. I have a lot of schools that are already starting to talk to us about this, and we'll see what could happen. I'm having conversations, like I said, with Cirrus Aircraft up in Duluth. They want to bring curriculum in, and they want to bring instructors and start to offer opportunities to these kids. So there really is a lot that could happen here, and I think the community will be excited about it. I think there's some opportunities that we can see for scholarships and getting these kids on their way. Admittedly, I'm more versed on the aviation side, but I'm learning on the commercial driver's license, and I think what's going to happen, you've already identified a couple, but when some of these other entities hear about the opportunities to do this, they're going to be really excited about using the capabilities. And then the community education pathway. The other beautiful thing about this is, and there's a lot to explore here, but I think just having the student access, but having some adults that can come back through the community ed that maybe want to make a career change or maybe want to use this, there's just incredible possibilities. So I'm excited. I'm glad that we're to this point. And frankly, the team that I've been working with, I don't know where it's going to go, but it's going to be something that nobody else is really trying out with as much aspirations and enthusiasm as I've seen here. So my kudos to the team. So.
Yeah.
And by the way, they did a great job at the legislature. I know Superintendent Johnson and Mark and Tim had all come down and testified in front of committee.
Well, before Tim talks, just let me mention a couple things. Ron was able to help us secure an appropriation from the state of $450,000 to help get this thing kicked off. I think his concern and my concern initially was that this was going to would probably be some sort of a grant opportunity that we were going to have to competitively compete for. But Ron was able to work his magic.
Back
down
room,
there.
smoky filled room, cut a deal.
Cut a deal, and it became an appropriation directly to us, and so it's not a grant opportunity. So publicly, I'd like to thank Ron for securing that funding for us, which is huge. So part of that funding, just so you know, is we are purchasing a full motion flight simulator and a commercial grade's the wrong word. We're also purchasing a CDL, a truck driving simulator. So we're going to be able to give kids about as close to the real thing opportunity as we can without asking them to crash or having to pay for them crash a plane or a truck, right? And so there's some really cool opportunities there, which also allows us then to approach potential partners to say, hey, look, if you can help us on informing some of these kids about how this equipment works, how it operates, what it does, we can also provide you with access to a simulator to work on different things with your drivers or with your pilots, so that you don't have to incur costs of somebody crashing one of your rigs either. And so there's a lot of really unique training and teaching opportunities that can happen. One of my favorite comments from Ron was, I love the idea of having a simulator because I can put the kids in all kinds of experiences that I can't do up in a real aircraft. It's too dangerous, right? But I can help them and I can prepare them in the simulator for that. And so that's really cool. And I'll let Mr. Bjorgi talk about some of the logistics of.
Yeah,
What's
so
happening?
as Ron indicated, this started a couple years ago when Ron approached me about offering really a pathway for kids interested in aviation. And at that time, we both agreed that community ed was the place to start. And I believe we had 4 or 5 kids that first year, 2 years ago, who completed the program, and we accepted that training in the form of experiential ed credits that would apply to graduation. And so it's been ongoing. We've identified a teacher that's willing and excited about getting the training to be able to teach the classroom part of it. It's Peter Masterjohn. He's one of our math instructors. He'll be heading to Maryland this July to get the background and training. We've identified a space in the north wing where we will be able to put the simulators, have easy access to the community when we get the community ed portion of it rolling. It fits really well into really the direction that we're going into the high school, which is organizing our school and academies, pathways, and partnerships. One of our partnerships that we have right now is a Camp Ripley experience class where we send kids to Camp Ripley and to see 2 young ladies flying an Apache helicopter at Camp Ripley for an hour, and they were just, it's amazing. It's actually absolutely amazing, the experience that our kids are going to get. So, as Ron stated and Mark, we'll see where it goes. We have the resources and a lot of energy behind it, and really excited.
Yeah, I think the thing that I would add off of what Tim said in the simulator, these aren't toys. These are the real deal.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the stuff that they're using in the industry. The simulator that you will have on the aviation side will be, that's the thing that these kids are getting trained in and pilots in, because there's a lot of great stuff that can happen there. The stuff on the CDL, same thing. And I mean, we are to a world now where that is so meaningful. And so having these kids in that environment is just, I mean, it's amazing. As you know, those of you involved with Ripley, same thing. We're doing simulations all the time. The other thing that I would say is, as Principal Bjorgi said, the community access piece is one of the things that's most exciting to me, because I can go down to the legislature and tell the story about how the school districts are going above and beyond and reaching back out to the community. A lot of times I know and from my experience with schools and talking to administrators, it feels like a one-way door, and this is the opposite. This is the school district offering a service right back to the community after the kids leave. I see the possibilities of the Knife River or the distributors being able to bring their drivers in during the winter months and allow them to do reoccurring training and to get safer again in environments that we couldn't offer if we didn't have capabilities like this. So the 360 loop on this for the community, I think is just amazing. And I have lots of things that I think about in this, and I told Mark and Tim, one of the things that I think will be the most interesting is how busy your school will be answering questions from other schools. I already have 5 asking how they set this up in the future. So I think that stepping out and being the leaders in this and putting a name for yourself, and we're the home of Lindbergh, there's just some tremendous opportunities here. So excited to do this.
What's the time frame about like where simulators would be installed and maybe, or operational?
So there's one simulator is supposed to be delivered sometime next week already. We were told it was a 3-month time frame, and that got shortened down to about 10 days.
Usually it's the opposite.
Yeah, usually it's the opposite. So we hope to have both simulators installed by the end of October. The first ground school class that Mr. Masterdon will be teaching will be in the spring semester, correct?
Correct, yeah.
And so, it's just kind of moving forward, and we're working on the CDL curriculum side of that. We're talking to some potential partners for that in terms of who might be good community supports to help us with that. We don't have any agreement with anyone yet, so I don't want to publicly talk about who we're visiting with right now, but it's really pretty exciting to think about. And then part of this too is how do we build this down to get kids even interested in this at younger levels. So you can actually start the ground school courses, you could start them when you're 14, 15 years old. And so one of the things that we're hoping to do is, and we've talked with Nate about it, is here at the middle school, creating a drone class, an elective drone class that kids could take, where we would be training them on how to get their drone pilots licensed. You start to build that anticipation and that interest in the whole aviation side that way, and that's a cool opportunity and a cool way for us to extend this down to some younger grades, and so we'll see what happens. But the goal is to be offering classes and experiences for the kids this school year.
Tim, you mentioned about having our instructor go down in July for training. Will this be trained for both CDL and the aviation?
This is for aviation.
Okay, so what are we doing about the CDL part?
Mark, just,
We're
we're
still-
working on it.
We're still working on that one.
So we don't have somebody that's able to step up and,
Well, we've kicked around some names, and we've got a few people in mind to talk with about it.
Mhm.
Part of it is being able to free up the right schedule and the right person's schedule to do it. And so there's a couple of names that we're thinking about. We haven't had a chance to visit with them to get a commitment from them yet that they're
Okay.
willing to do it.
The other thing I would add on that, when you look at the aviation versus the driver's license, the paths are very differently defined. The aviation is a very regimented, runs you through, can be very long. The CDL side typically comes from tech schools and all that, and it's a very condensed. So it's just two very different opportunities. And the other thing that I would add, you mentioned Doug on the time frame. It's exciting that the simulators will be in place even as soon in the next couple of weeks, because one of the things is I've talked to Mark and Tim is I'd like to help get community excitement and start training adults and invite teachers, school board, if you guys want to come in, see how this works. So we can talk this, because at some point we'll be approaching, there's an organization called the EAA, we'll be approaching community organizations and asking them to donate scholarships to get kids through aviation programs. Because, like, for example, the young man that we have now, he'll have his private pilot's license by the end of July. He'll go to Mankato. He'll be a year ahead of the class he goes in with, and he'll be almost a year and a half ahead of those students getting jobs. So at 21 years old, he could be sitting right seat to a regional jet, probably making a lot more than I do, which is great. I mean, it's great opportunities for these kids. And the other thing I would add, this also gives an opportunity for, and I'll say this carefully, there are students that come from families that have very good opportunities in front of them, of means. There are kids that have no idea they can do this, and those are the kids I want to get to. Those are the ones, because I was that kid. Those are the kids that someone comes up and says, nobody gets to tell you you don't get to do this anymore. We're going to offer these opportunities. So that's what I'm really excited about. That's what the real impetus and why I became a flight instructor is. I want to get to that kid. That's the one that I think is most exciting to see grow.
well, anywhere we can build up some more vocational classes on 4.
Absolutely.
That's one thing the community's really asked about.
That's what the world's looking for.
Yes. Any other questions, comments? Anything else you guys would like to share with us?
I just know having the simulators in the school by October is going to create a lot of excitement, because the uncertainty of whether or not it was going to happen or not, I was able to secure a time for Mr. Masterjohn to teach it, but we didn't have it in the registration booklet.
Right.
And so, which is not uncommon, we'll have kids want to register for that class. I'm suspecting that we're going to have to strategically have
Yeah.
a way to taper the excitement, and you know, certainly seniors would have the first opportunity, and then juniors, et cetera. So once the equipment arrives, especially with Ron promoting it in the community.
I can quit talking about it, but I probably won't.
No, you won't. You won't.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah,
you very
thank you.
much.
Thank you for the
Yeah,
support.
thank you.
We'll look
Mark.
forward to
Yep.
an update when your simulators are going.
Oh, you're going to be in it, Sharon.
Oh, I don't know. I have trouble with roller skates. Okay, next I'm going to be turning it over to Greg for his strategic plan update, and then I'll let you roll right into your superintendent's report.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Board members, back in early June, we had a work session focused on strategic planning, and I won't repeat the work that took place that night and the information that was shared by Julie Critz from Partner Ed, but I do want to give you a quick update. We, as a leadership team, spent a lot of time last week at our leadership retreat working on the strategic plan, and I feel we're in a great place with a process that takes quite a bit of time, especially if you want to make sure you get the plan tailored to what your district needs are. Right now, we have 4 priority areas that are identified within our strategic planning work, and that's teaching and learning is number 1. Number 2 is finance and facilities. Number 3 is communications and marketing. And number 4 is mental health and wellness. And the remaining work that our team, our leadership team, will continue to do, and you heard this from our facilitator from Partner Ed, is to fine-tune the goals underneath each one of those priority areas. We have some sample goals that are listed in the document that you have in your packet. Tomorrow we have another administrative meeting where we're going to revisit those goals to make sure that they clearly meet the needs of our school district, excuse me. We'll bring that to you likely in July for your final approval. And then you also have a document in your packet that includes the mission, vision, and core values. And some tweaking that we did this past week was combining our mission and vision. They were very similar and felt that the two could work closer together combined. And then just a big discussion about the importance of reaching 100% of our students. As we look to set goals focused on growth for our students, we want to set the bar at 100%. We feel that that's, if we're talking about individual growth and focusing on what the needs are of our students, that has to be our priority, not 90%, not 80%, 100%. So I look forward to more details in July for this group. That's
Any
all I have.
questions for Greg?
Oh, my superintendent's report.
Yeah, you're
Wanna-
still on.
I want to thank Mr. Swenson for coming in and providing that information about cell phones and social emotional support for our students. I really appreciate the board's comments and questions and the idea that we bring Mr. Swenson back and provide an update on how things are going. It is a area that's built into the priorities of our strategic plan. It fits very well with middle school. As we kind of kidded around, you couldn't pick a better spot to start that type of work. I want to thank Ron, Tim, and Mark for their update regarding the transportation pathway, and just really want to emphasize how special it is to be in a district that's appropriated dollars from the legislators for something like this. In our research, Mr. Bjorgi and I determined that we believe there's 3 other districts in the state that provide an aviation program for high school students. I don't know that any of those schools, Tim, do they have a simulator like we'll have?
No.
So really excited about the opportunity for our students and community, but also the opportunity to share with other school districts, as Ron indicated, what we learn. I do want to give a shout out to our administrative team for 3 days of hard work last week focused on our strategic planning, enhancing our leadership team norms. As you talk about cell phones at the middle school, we actually talked about cell phones at the administrative table as well, and how we need to put those on pause at time. And then a really good discussion about instructional leadership and the importance of that role as leaders in our district. That's all I have.
Thank you. Next, we will move into the approval. This is an action item of the adopted budget, and our presenter is Chris. And you do have a copy in your packet. Is there a special page you'd like us to start on?
I'm gonna jump to the page 4.
Page 4?
Page 4 is enrollment. Enrollment is the single most important factor in determining Little Falls Community Schools' revenues. Over the past 6 years, we have experienced some gradual decline in our enrollment. However, looking to fiscal year '24, we are projecting to have stable enrollment. Just to highlight the decline in enrollment, looking at fiscal year '19, comparing that to fiscal year '24, that's a decline of about 162 students. At roughly about $10,000 per student, that's 1.6 million in revenue that we are no longer receiving. Jump to page 5, which is page specifically for the general fund. The general fund is used for the district's normal operations. This is primarily salaries and benefits, instructional supplies, technology, transportation, textbooks, and the majority of our facility repairs. Overall, the biggest funding component in the general fund is the basic formula allowance, which for fiscal year '24 will be $7,138, which is a 4% increase from fiscal year '23. We then take that and apply what's called pupil unit weighting, which essentially means that a secondary student receives an extra 0.2. So secondary student will generate $8,566 in basic formula allowance, and an elementary student will generate $7,138. Essentially what that means is the district generates roughly $18 million in the basic formula allowance for fiscal year '24. That's easily our single largest source of revenue in the general fund. Jumping down to the bottom portion of that page, I like to highlight the historical basic formula allowance over the past 10 years or so. Jumping to the bottom there, you can see the 4% increase for fiscal year '24 and a 2% for fiscal year '25. That is the largest basic formula increase we've received in probably ever. I do also like to highlight that the historical increases between 1.5 and 2% historically have not kept up with inflation and have put a lot of pressure on districts' general fund budgets over that 10-year period. Jumping to page 6, which is the fund balance policy for the district. The Little Falls Community Schools has a formal fund balance policy that calls for an unassigned general fund balance between 5 and 7% of the general fund operating budget. The graph below illustrates the general fund unrestricted fund balance over the last 10 years. At June 30th, 2022, the district had an unassigned fund balance of 7.41%. The revised budget for fiscal year '23 is projecting the unassigned fund balance for at June 30th, 2023 to be 4.28%, and this proposed adopted budget for fiscal year '24 is projecting that fund balance to again decline to 2.78%. Jumping to page 7, which is our general fund revenues by source. Overall, state aids are about 81% of our general fund revenue budget. When comparing that to the prior year, that's a significant increase in state aids of about 2.3 million. Our second largest source of revenues in the general fund is our federal aids, which is seeing a decrease in revenues of about 2.1 million, which is due to our ESSER funds being depleted. Overall, the general fund revenue budget is up about 500,000 or 1.53%. Jumping to page 6, which is general fund expenses by program. Overall, the district spends the majority of our general fund budget on elementary and secondary instruction. About 40% of our general fund budget is charged there. Our second largest area is special ed, which is about 20% of our general fund budget. Jumping to page 9, which is general fund expenses by object code. We are a service organization as a school district. The majority of our expenses are charged to salary and benefits, which accounts for about 76% of our general fund budget. Moving on to page 10, highlight our food service revenues. We serve approximately 2,800 meals a day at 7 sites during the traditional school year. One of the major legislative changes this year was the Universal Free School Meals Bill, which allows us to provide 1 free breakfast and 1 free lunch to all students regardless of their economic status. In the chart there, you can see the shift from pupil sales to state aids. A significant change. I think it's a great change. I do also want to highlight the importance of families still completing the free and reduced price meal applications. That is a significant source of revenue in our general fund. We still need that information. Jumping to page 11, food service expenses by object code. Nothing too exciting here. I just want to highlight the capital expenditures line item. Our food service fund balance is higher than what is the state technically allows. So they give us a few areas where we can spend down that fund balance, and generally it's going to be cafeteria equipment. So we are planning on new serving lines at Lindbergh, a new freezer at the middle school, and a updated dish room at the high school.
Is there a timeline when that has to be spent down? Or I mean, like, to whatever level it needs to be, or not really?
No, it's just a
Suggestion?
yeah. They did increase it for a lot of districts are in this situation due to the COVID funding that was
Mhm.
received in the food service program. So not a significant issue. Good problem to have. Jump to page 12 for community service revenues. Community ed is a mix of state aid and local levy. No major changes there from the prior year on the revenue side. Jumping to page 13 for community ed expenses. Again, no major changes to community ed budget on the expenditure side. I will say I am a conservative budgeter in the community ed area. So I do anticipate this will perform better than budget. Jumping to page 14 for our debt service. The debt service fund is designated to account for the revenues and expenditures associated with the district's outstanding debts. The debt service fund is a mix of state aids and local levy. The biggest state aid category is the school building bond agricultural credit, which provides a 70% reduction to qualifying agricultural property. That's a significant source of revenue for our tax base. We have a good chunk of agricultural property here. For fiscal year 24, our debt service revenues are going to be $2,436,787, and our expenses will be $2,383,500. The projected fund balance is projected to be just about 494,000 at June 30th, 2024. I provided a schedule of our outstanding debts in the chart below. Overall, slowly spending down, no major changes for any of the fiscal years there, so should be consistent for the next 10 years or so. Jumping to page 15, just to highlight the federal relief funds. Little Falls Community Schools was eligible for about $6.6 million in federal COVID relief grants, the 3 major grants, acts, I suppose. The table illustrates below kind of how much we received and spent in those various grants. For fiscal year, for June 30th, 2023, we are projecting to have about $433,000 remaining in ESSER funds. Most of that will be restricted for learning loss, which can be used primarily for summer school or after-school programs. I'm gonna jump to page 16, the property taxes. This hasn't changed since the revised budget. Typically, if you want to review this, I recommend starting at the bottom and working your way up. Overall, I'm not going to touch a whole lot on that. I'm going to jump to page 17, which is the budget summary. The very first line at the top is the most important line. You can see June 1st, 2022, we had a unassigned fund balance of 4.28%, and looking to June 30th, 2024, we are projecting to have a fund balance of 2.78%, which leaves us with a deficit, an operating deficit of about $503,000. The majority of our salaries and benefits are charged to the unassigned category. Just to kind of jump down the line, looking at long-term facility maintenance, that's a big categorical area for us. I do have that as balanced currently. That could change as we look to our revised budget sometime around December. I'm going to jump down to the total general fund. Our budgeted general fund revenues are $33,304,253. Our budgeted expenditures are in the general fund are $33,866,007, which leaves us with a deficit of $561,754 in the general fund. Looking at Fund 2, we do have a deficit there of about $330,000. That's primarily due to the equipment that we're planning on purchasing. Fund 4, I also have a deficit there of $189,000. At this point, that's not concerning. I do budget conservatively in community ed. Fund 6, I did not budget for our construction project for the early childhood building. That will get updated with a revised budget. Debt service we touched on. We do have the FOMA Trust and the Flyer Backpack Program. No major changes there. The custodial fund is primarily used for our scholarships, and the OPEB Irrevocable Trust is for post-employment benefits. So overall, revenues of all funds leaves us with a revenue budget of $38,954,655, and our expenditure budget, all funds, is $40,060,426. Total all funds deficit of $1,105,771. So the total fund deficit isn't really concerning. But the general fund budget is what we obviously should focus on. Questions?
Any questions for Chris at this time? Hearing none, we do have this is an action item this evening. We need to approve the budget as he presented. I need a motion and a second to do that.
So moved.
Thank you, and a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second on the board for the approval of the budget as presented this evening. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And thank you, Chris. A lot of work there. Our next action item is a membership approval. One is for the MSBA and the other is for the MREA. Before discussion on it, I need a motion for this, please.
So moved.
And a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second on the MSBA and the MREA. Any comments or questions regarding either of these? And MSBA is the Minnesota State Board Association. MREA is the Minnesota Rural Education Association.
So I have a question on the MSBA. So on that invoice, it shows we have a board book subscription. So I'm assuming that it's the board book that is used, I guess, here or whatever. So
Correct.
is that used in any other capacity other than as a board here?
No.
How many on the board that are sitting here this evening do use it? I personally do not.
I do.
I do.
You do?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
When
So-
I was on the board when this was first introduced to us. And what I remember is it was supposed to make it so much easier for Julie, who had Kelly's job back then, because all the departments were gonna be able to open it up, update information for them. Is that happening?
I
No.
get I get the information and I put it in, but it's not put in your board book, I personally put it in.
So I guess my question is for $2,100 for 12 meetings a year, I don't see the value.
I agree with Doug on this one. Well, I agree with you on a lot of other things too, but this one right now. I'm just thinking, especially after we just approved the budget, and with that, I think we could spend $2,000 in a lot better way. But Kelly, this is gonna affect your job. Is there, what are other districts, who has any information or experience with other districts of how they do it without the book?
I'm not sure, we can do a little research and look and see, there are other ways to do things.
But if you're getting the information, and putting it in there,
It's
I mean-
just organizing the information, basically what it does is, if I get the information, I load it, and I organize it in
Your
your board book.
attachments are in
The
there.
attachments
Mhm.
go in there, and then it's posted public so you can see it.
But you're pretty much doing all of that for the board book.
Yeah,
whereas you're saying what's supposed to happen is whoever's providing the information is supposed to be importing it into board
and
book.
then I would go through and put it in, yes, but
Right.
it's not happening that way.
Right.
Suggest that we don't utilize it in full capacity, which is.
Right. Which then leads me to the question,
Why are we
why
paying
are
for
we
it?
paying for it?
And after I brought this up to Kelly today, I told her then the next thing I did was opened a email from MSBA, which had a tutorial in there of how to use board book to better improve. Said, I think they're watching my emails. I don't know, there's two different ways we could go at this. We could approve MSBA membership, adjusted without the board book. I don't know if that can be added to it later. We could do that this evening, or this isn't due until, is it July or August?
August 15th.
August 15th. We could put it on business for next month, if you want to look into it and see if there's some place where we can, where you can have a program that isn't gonna cost us $2,000.
Some districts use Google Drive as their board management system.
I
and I
personally
just-
have trouble getting into this.
Well, and I was just gonna say, I know we do a lot of stuff with Google Drive and, so why couldn't we just do that?
And a cost on that? No-
Zero.
No cost? Are you familiar with it or comfortable with it? Well, then I'll make a motion to approve MSBA omitting the board book subscription for this next year and see how it goes.
A second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second on the floor. Any other discussion?
Are we just
Oh,
talking
yeah.
about MSBA?
Just MSBA.
Okay.
It's
Just
two
MSBA.
separate memberships this
Okay.
evening. Hearing no other discussion on it, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of approving the MSBA membership omitting board book signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And we will go with that. Next, we also have a membership for the MREA. Does anybody have any comments or concerns about this? The 23-24 dues is $2,500.
What do we get out of this one that we don't get with MSBA?
I get more out of MREA than I do
Mainly lobby, I
MSBA.
think, for rural schools and non-metro schools.
Mm-hmm.
Like the email I got today, they had a lot of classes that we could sign up for. There was not a single class that was central or northern Minnesota. You had to
Like
drive
location.
for location. Everything was metro. And
For MSBA.
for MSBA. MREA is around the whole state, but I'm more comfortable with the classes and the conference that we go to for that. It deals more with our type of situation. It's not metro.
Right, what I like about the MSBA one is that we have the policy, access to the policy, which is huge.
Mhm.
But if we have access to trainings at both, why pay for both? You know what I mean? That would also cut from our budget too, is my thought. But, just a thought.
I guess if we were gonna cut one out, I would cut out personally the MSBA instead of the MREA.
I would not solely because of the policies that we
Policies
have
are
access
huge.
to. That is really huge because they have legal people that go through those policies before they're recommended to school
But I know
districts.
twice this year I had the experience of contacting MSBA, asking for help and never got a comment back. Got no response back from them.
I think you're spot on with your analysis of both organizations. There's definitely a lot of overlap, but they do provide additional
Separate.
services that do help school boards and school districts. MSBA also has some legal services that we can tap into. This legislative session, as it wraps up, they'll provide guidance in relation to handbooks and other statutes that come into play. And like Sharon said, I think MREA does a really nice job of honing in on the needs of outstate Minnesota, and that level of training that they offer is unique and different than MSBA. Definitely overlap.
Mhm.
I'd be all for keeping MREA if they, well, both, just MREA, if they had the policy information that MSBA does, but I think like you just said, it makes more sense to keep them both just because MREA is more localized to rural Minnesota. They do have a bunch of stuff. I did a couple of trainings through them already.
And they do offer online classes. Well, both of them do, but MREA, I've done a couple online ones too.
No comment?
Well, before we can go further, I need a motion and a second on approving the membership renewal for MREA.
I'll make a motion.
Okay,
I'll second it.
got a motion and a second on renewing the membership for MREA. Is there anybody who feels that this is something we should not, that we should cut from our budget?
I guess I would vote no to that. For this year at least. So we're on a deficit budget.
Any other comments?
Well, the savings from removing board book from MSBA kind of almost covers the
Correct.
renewal for MREA, so I'm not against renewing it.
Call for a vote. All those in favor of approving the MREA membership renewal signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, we have a 3-to-1 vote. So we will maintain MREA as it stands and MSBA without the board book going forward. Okay, next is 10.3. And this is also an action item. And this is asking the board to approve Greg Johnson to act as the identified official with authority and Iowa. No, Iowa,
Mhm.
for Little Falls Community Schools, for the EDIAM board resolution. I'm not sure exactly what the explanation is for that.
This provides me access to the Minnesota Department of Education's secure website. It allows me to approve grants, approve
Okay.
title applications, make sure that we have the designated people identified in our district for each building, business manager, community services.
So we're going to approve you to have access to what's above our pay level.
I'd be willing to pass it along to someone else.
Okay, a motion and a second, please, for 10.3.
So moved.
Second, please.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve Greg Johnson to act as with authority for us for Little Falls Community Schools. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next, we have the 23-24 resolution. So I guess I turn this over to you with that magic word.
Is there a resolution to read?
Adopted budget.
Just the application, isn't
It's just the application. So let's see.
Yes, this is similar to MREA and MSBA that were, I don't see that, yeah. Is there a resolution? Actually, we have to approve it,
You have to approve it.
and then it's generated online.
Oh, okay,
So it's our membership into the high school league.
okay.
I'll make a motion to approve.
No second.
You have a motion and a second to approve the membership for the Minnesota State High School League. Any comments or questions at this time? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next, we have a discussion coming up. This is also an action item on a soccer co-op approval. Did you want to speak to us about this, please?
Yeah, I can. Cooperative-wise in sports, we have about 7 cooperatives right now. And the 2 that you would be acting on tonight are new ones. Our boys and girls soccer program don't have any other schools involved. Upsala would like to co-op with us in girls soccer. Long Prairie would like to co-op with us in boys soccer. And it's not the first time that these 2 schools have come to us. It's been a conversation in and out the last 3-4 years. When a cooperative happens and 2 schools or 2 or more schools decide to co-op, it stays intact once the high school league approves it until one of the schools chooses no longer to co-op. It basically just dissolve the co-op and it goes back to every individual school and what they offer. But a little bit about these 2, Upsala, they've had some families that have been involved with our youth programs at the elementary level. And now those students are in 7th and 8th grade and would like to participate in our program. Long Prairie, on the other hand, is more interested in trying to get soccer started in their community. There's a lot of soccer being played within their community, but they're not, they don't have enough to start their own program. And they would like to use us kind of as a springboard. So that co-op is maybe short-term, maybe not. Who knows if they would be able to get one going. The conversation that we always have when somebody comes to us and asks if we want to co-op, a couple things are important to us. One is, does combining with them affect our classification with the high school? Each sport has 2 to 4 classes, and you're placed in those classes based on your enrollment number. So neither one of these would change our classification. The second thing we always look at is, do we have a full program already? You know, do we have every level, varsity, JV, C squad if that's involved, middle school, 7th and 8th grade? And basically, that's why we didn't co-op a few years ago, because our soccer numbers were pretty high in both boys and girls. Our girls' numbers right now are pretty solid. We would have a team at all 3 levels, which is varsity, JV, and middle school. But there's only a couple families interested from Upsala, and they already know our families, and in our discussion, we'd be in favor of trying it. With boys soccer, a couple years ago, we had plenty. We were in the mid-30s, had enough for varsity JV. Right now, those numbers are under 20, and we would be in jeopardy of having a full JV schedule if we don't co-op. So that gives you a little bit of history on the 2 in front of you, but also what's gone into the conversation with the other 7 co-ops that you currently have.
So, when we co-op, is there a cost share involved with this?
So all of our co-ops are set up the same. You would keep track of all the expenditures of the program, and that includes the expenditures the other schools have. For example, we provide transportation for the girls' hockey to go to Brainerd. If a school provides transportation, that's considered in the total cost of the program. Once you come up with the total expenditures, then you prorate it based on how many participants you have total. So if we have 20 participants and Long Prairie sends us 5, it's not a good example probably, because we'd be looking at 30 participants and maybe they're sending us 10. But it would be prorated according to how many you have in the program.
Before we go any farther with this, can I have a motion and a second? So we can have any more discussion and then a vote on accepting both the Upsala and the Long Prairie soccer agreements.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, we have a motion, a second?
Second.
And Dan has a second. Okay, now we can continue with discussion. I'm sorry, I should have done that first. Any other questions for Kevin?
I have one question, but you kind of somewhat answered it, but is there a reason why we're not offering the co-op for both boys and girls from both schools versus just girls from Upsala and just boys from Long Prairie, and or making it just Long Prairie, since they're the ones that have the boys interested, but opening up to boys and girls from one district instead of splitting it between the 2?
Great question. I mean, basically all of our co-ops, we didn't go out and seek them. They have come to us because we've offered the program. They don't offer the program, so the advantage, their pro is they can now offer it to their students. This is what they came with. Upsala came, asked if we had co-op in girls soccer because of the couple families that have girls. Long Prairie came to us with boys soccer because they have a high interest in their community and would like to try to get their program built.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Kevin? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. We're voting on the Upsala girls soccer agreement and the Long Prairie boys soccer agreement. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Next, the one that I was confused about and had to check to see if it was a typo. 10.6, extended student transportation agreement with both Strauch's and Palmer Bus. This is a 1-month extension until we finish negotiations for the next year's contract. So I'll accept a motion for extending both for Palmer and for Strauchs at this time.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion, a second, please.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Questions?
So being this is an extension then, does this fall on, still on the 22 school year, or is this just an extension of what they already made for the end of 22 as the first month of 23, 24?
Yeah, if I'm understanding the question correctly, it's an extension of the current
Contract.
agreement and rates. Mhm.
Okay.
And we are using their services with summer school.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
Any other questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote to accept the extension of 1 month until hopefully negotiations are done with both Strauchs and Palmers. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next, in information only, dealing with Day of Caring. There was an attachment. It says for all the donations and for the sponsorship. Was there any other thing else, or it was just read for your information? Okay, next we have an action item for 2 different policies. Both are dealing with medication. They were in your packets. The approval of the first one is for policy 516.5, dealing with overdose medication. I need a motion and a second, please.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any comments or concerns about this policy 516.5? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the next is the approval of policy 516 titled Student Medication. We're being asked to approve policy 516 on student medications, and the policy was in your packet for the last couple of months. Motion, please, and a second.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor to approve policy 516 dealing with student medications. Any comments, questions, or concerns?
Madam Chair, I'd like to ask that the board table policy 516 one more month. We do
Okay.
have a couple of minor revisions that need to be included. Thankfully, we have until August to get this approved.
Okay.
We'll have those for you in July.
Is there any concerns from anybody about tabling this for 1 more month? So we're right up. Okay, then so done.
Thank you.
Okay, next we're going to go into reports from board members, and Dan, would you start us off, please?
I was able, along with everybody else, take part in the graduation ceremony last month, and it was very great experience and also humbling at the same time. Brought back a lot of memories to when I had walked across stage myself. So that's all I got.
Okay, Doug?
Nope, just maybe a shout out to the baseball team. I know they made it to state, and I know with spring sports, with school being over and stuff, a lot of that kind of, gets missed. So, but yeah, great job for those guys and fun times. So that's all I have.
Kelsey?
I have nothing to report.
Okay, mine's gonna be pretty short too. I have 3 thank you notes that we received. I'll pass down to the board members to look at. It's been actually a little bit on the busy side with a few extra meetings, and so I was able to meet with the financial committee, found out about some of the summer projects which have been touched on here. Besides our own graduation, I went to the CEC graduation. That was a little bit even more of a tearjerker. That's a very emotional group going through with that. So, hoping everybody's having a good summer and they'll have a safe 4th of July. And since we're short the other 2 board members, they can give us a double shot next month. So at this time, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment. Thank you, and a second.
Second.
Anybody else got anything else to bring before the board? Hearing nothing, I call for a vote. All those in favor of adjourning at this time signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. I'm not going to ask if anybody...